The 5 Love Languages. The Secret to Love That Lasts. Chapter 1. What happens to love after the wedding? At 30,000 feet, somewhere between Buffalo and Dallas, he put his magazine in the seat pocket, turned in my direction, and asked, "What kind of work do you do?" "I do marriage counseling and lead marriage enrichment seminars," I said matter-of-factly. "I've been wanting to ask someone this for a long time," he said. "What happens to love after you get married?" Relinquishing my hope for a nap, I asked, "What do you mean?" "Well," he said, "I've been married 3 times, and each time it was wonderful before we got married, but somehow after the wedding it fell apart. All the love I thought I had for her, and all the love she seemed to have for me, evaporated. I am a fairly intelligent person. I operate a successful business, but I don't understand it." "How long were you married?" I asked. "The first one lasted about 10 years. The second time we were married 3 years, and the last one almost 6 years." "Did your love evaporate immediately after the wedding, or was it a gradual loss?" I inquired. "Well, the second one went wrong from the very beginning. I don't know what happened. I really thought we loved each other. But the honeymoon was a disaster, and we never recovered. We only dated 6 months. It was a whirlwind romance. It was really exciting. But after the marriage, it was a battle from the beginning. In my first marriage, we had 3 or 4 good years before the baby came. After the baby was born, I felt like she gave her attention to the baby, and I no longer mattered. It was as if her real goal in life was to have a baby, and after the baby, she no longer needed me." "Did you tell her that?" I asked. "Yes, I told her. She said I was crazy. She said I did not understand the stress of being a 24-hour nurse. She said I should be more understanding and help her more. I really tried, but it didn't seem to make any difference. After that, we just grew further apart. After a while, there was no love left. Just deadness. Both of us agreed the marriage was over. My last marriage, I really thought that one would be different. I'd been divorced for 3 years. We dated each other for 2 years. I really thought we knew what we were doing. And I thought that perhaps for the first time, I really knew what it meant to love someone. I genuinely felt that she loved me. After the wedding, I don't think I changed. I continued to express love for her as I had before marriage. I told her how beautiful she was. I told her how much I loved her. I told her how proud I was to be her husband. But a few months after marriage, she started complaining about petty things at first, like my not taking out the garbage or not hanging up my clothes. Later, she went to attacking my character, telling me she didn't feel like she could trust me, accusing me of not being faithful to her. She became a totally negative person. Before marriage, she was never negative. She was one of the most positive people I had ever met. That was one of the things that attracted me to her. She never complained about anything. Everything I did was wonderful. But once we were married, it seemed I could do nothing right. I honestly don't know what happened. Eventually, I lost my love for her and began to resent her. She obviously had no love for me. We agreed that there was no benefit in our living together any longer, so we split. That was a year ago. So my question is, what happens to love after the wedding? Is my experience common? Is that why we have so many divorces in our country? I can't believe it happened to me 3 times. And those who don't divorce, do they learn to live with the emptiness? Or does love really stay alive in some marriages? If so, how? The questions my friend seated in 5A was asking are the questions that thousands of married people and divorced persons are asking today. Some are asking friends, some are asking counselors and clergy, some are asking themselves. Sometimes the answers are couched in psychological research jargon that is almost incomprehensible. Sometimes they're couched in humor and folklore. Most of the jokes and pithy sayings contain some truth, but they're like offering aspirin to a person with cancer. The desire for romantic love and marriage is deeply rooted in our psychological makeup. Books abound on the subject. Television and radio talk shows deal with it. The internet is full of advice. So are our parents and friends and churches. Keeping love alive in our marriages is a serious business. With all the help available from media experts, why is it so few couples seem to have found the secret to keeping their love alive after their wedding? Why is it that a couple can attend a communication workshop, hear the wonderful ideas of how to enhance communication, return home, and find themselves totally unable to implement the communication patterns demonstrated? How is it that we read something online on 101 ways to express love to your spouse, select 2 or 3 ways that seem especially helpful, try them, and our spouse doesn't even acknowledge our effort? We give up the other 98 ways and go back to life as usual. The truth we're missing. The answers to those questions is the purpose of this book. It is not that the books and articles already published are not helpful. The problem is that we have overlooked one fundamental truth. People speak different love languages. My academic training is in the area of anthropology. Therefore, I have studied in the areas of linguistics, which identifies a number of major language groups: Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, English, Portuguese, Arabic, Greek, German, French, and so on. Most of us grow up learning the language of our parents and siblings, which becomes our primary or native tongue. Later, we may learn additional languages, but usually with much more effort. Those become our secondary languages. We speak and understand best our native language. We feel more comfortable speaking that language. The more we use the secondary language, the more comfortable we become conversing in it. If we speak only our primary language and encounter someone else who speaks only his or her primary language, which is different from ours, our communication will be limited. We must rely on pointing, grunting, drawing pictures, or acting out our ideas. We can communicate, but it's awkward. Language differences are part and parcel of human culture. If we are to communicate effectively across cultural lines, we must learn the language of those with whom we wish to communicate. In the area of love, it is similar. Your emotional love language and the language of your spouse may be as different as Chinese from English. No matter how hard you try to express your love in English, if your spouse only understands Chinese, you will never understand how to love each other. My friend on the plane was speaking the language of affirming words to his third wife when he said, "I told her how beautiful she was. I told her I loved her. I told her how proud I was to be her husband." He was speaking love, and he was sincere. But she did not understand his language. Perhaps she was looking for love in his behavior and didn't see it. Being sincere is not enough. We must be willing to learn our spouse's primary love language if we are to be effective communicators of love. My conclusion, after many years of marriage counseling, is that there are 5 emotional love languages, 5 ways that people speak and understand emotional love. In the field of linguistics, a language may have numerous dialects or variations. Similarly, within the 5 basic emotional love languages, there are many dialects. The number of ways to express love within a love language is limited only to one's imagination. The important thing is to speak the love language of your spouse. Seldom do a husband and wife have the same primary emotional love language. We tend to speak our primary love language, and we become confused when our spouse does not understand what we're communicating. We are expressing our love, but the message doesn't come through because we're speaking what, to them, is a foreign language. Therein lies the fundamental problem, and it is the purpose of this book to offer a solution. That is why I dare to write another book of love. Once we discover the 5 basic love languages and understand our own primary love language, as well as the primary love language of our spouse, we will then have the needed information to apply the ideas in the books and articles. Once you identify and learn to speak your spouse's primary love language, I believe that you will have discovered the key to a long-lasting, loving marriage. Love need not evaporate after the wedding, but in order to keep it alive, Most of us will have to put forth the effort to learn a secondary love language. We cannot rely on our native tongue if our spouse does not understand it. If we want them to feel the love that we're trying to communicate, we must express it in their primary love language.